could not be more excited about our next speaker. I never thought I'd see the day when I was this excited to introduce and hear from a provost. As he talks about a strategic framework, right? All of that was foreign to me, but there's no one I'd rather hear from. And as he talks about the direction of Notre Dame and what we're doing, and he and many others are the architect of it. So let me just say that I pulled his bio, and I love that it says, John McGreevy is an acclaimed historian with a focus on both American and global religion and politics. He was a dean of the arts and letters, 2 terms, I believe, and now he's our 6th provost, only 6th. Why is that? This was a new position established in 1970, but even if you think about that tenure of provost, it's unique at Notre Dame, and so we are incredibly blessed. John and I have some things in common. We both hail from South Dakota. How about that? We're both history majors, and we both graduated summa cum laude. Oh, wait, that last one's not true. John graduated a couple years, as you can probably tell, before me, 1986. He earned his master's and doctoral degrees from Stanford after graduating from Notre Dame, magna cum laude, and then he went on and taught at Harvard until Notre Dame was able to lure him back here to his home. And how fortunate we are. I could go on, but I won't because you need to hear from him. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give our provost a warm welcome.
Thank you. Very kind. Okay, don't stop applauding. Can everyone hear me? Okay, don't stop applauding, because one thing I'm going to talk about today is the role of the Alumni Association in Notre Dame's next decade. And that comes out of the strength, the extraordinary strength, which is one of the university's great comparative advantages in having such a strong alumni association. We need to give a round of applause to the leader of that alumni association, Dolly Duffy. Okay, we have 45 minutes together. I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes. I'm going to have plenty of time for questions. And the overarching subject is Notre Dame the next 10 years. Some of you know we released a strategic framework in the fall, and that guides the university for the next 10 years. First, a word about myself. Dolly mentioned that I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I was the kind of kid who scared the admissions office. All I wanted to do was come to Notre Dame. My dad went here in the 1950s. I came here, never thought I'd come back, but I did come back, as Dolly mentions, to be part of the history department. Then I was chair of the history department, dean of College of Arts and Letters, and I've been provost for the last 2 years. This is my family, so I'm in the middle. My wife, Jean, is on the right. Nora, who's a Notre Dame graduate and now works in Chicago, is on her right. Patrick, who's one of our 2 twins and is a junior at Loyola in Chicago. And next to me on my left is Margaret, who is a Notre Dame graduate as well. And she's now in the ACE program, so she'll have 2 Notre Dame degrees. And she's teaching in Austin, Texas. And that's Leo, one of our 2 twins, who is a junior at Kalamazoo College. We had 4 kids in 4 years. I don't remember a thing about that period of my life. Okay, what is a provost? I am going to call on somebody. I'm looking at you, sir, distinguished gentleman right here. Say your name. Russ. Where are you from, Russ? Indianapolis. Indianapolis Club?
Yeah, and the Kokomo Club.
Okay, and the Kokomo Club. What is a provost? How would you answer that? Okay. Russ, that was a much longer answer than I anticipated. And that's a very good answer. Round of applause for Russ. I mean, it's really quite good. So, yeah, number 2 person at the university, but that's not so important. There's another part of the title that's even more important. If the provost is and I realize most people don't know the answer to this, some chief academic, your name? Shelley, you work here. No, where are you from?
I'm from Northwest Indiana.
Northwest, we have a lot of Indiana residents here, clustered up to the front to answer the question. The provost is the chief academic officer. So you think about the deans, the library, the Office of Research, all of that reports to the provost's office. This is the framework we released this spring, or rather last fall, that we really worked on as a university for 2 years. 9 university committees, hundreds of faculty participating in sessions to talk about what the future of the university might be. And we're proud of it. And we hope this is our guide over the next decade. I always say this one out loud. Notre Dame, the leading global Catholic research university, on par with, but distinct from, the world's best private universities. If somebody asks you what Notre Dame is and what Notre Dame wants to be in one sentence, I think this is a pretty good answer. The leading global Catholic research university, that's pretty self-evident. What does on par with but distinct from the world's best private universities mean? On par with means if we're going to be the Notre Dame the world needs, we have to be every bit as good as Duke or University of Chicago or Stanford or Harvard or Yale or places that you can name as well as I can. We have to be every bit as good as they are if we're going to be heard and listened to, because those are culture-shaping institutions. They shape the world we live in. They train a disproportionate number of the world's leaders. The research conducted at those institutions sets the agenda on fields from biology to history. So we want to be every bit as good as they are, but the world doesn't need another Duke. It doesn't need, with great respect, another Northwestern. It needs the best possible Notre Dame, animated by a distinctive Catholic mission and with a very particular mission to go out and change the world. That's what the world needs. Some of you know Notre Dame was recently admitted into the AAU. That's Association of American Universities. It's an organization of the most prestigious research universities in North America, and some extent in the world. And we are one of 35 private institutions in that organization. It's a wonderful honor. It's wonderful that occurred near the end of Father Jenkins' remarkable tenure as president. Now, to be honest, before we got into the AAU, we thought the admissions procedures were very discriminatory, potentially biased against Notre Dame. Now that we're in the AAU, we think no one else should ever be allowed in. Here's why, though, the AAU matters. There's a networking function to it. So I go to a meeting of provosts, and Father Jenkins has been to 2 meetings of presidents, and lots of other people in the university can go to meetings and learn from our peers and try and do better. But I think the more important thing is we're the only religious university, formally religious university, in the AAU. Again, a distinctive mission for Notre Dame in the very competitive world of the most prestigious research universities. Becoming the Notre Dame the world needs will require us to become better at thinking as an institution. This is probably the sentence that came most strongly out of the 2 years of work that went into the framework. The idea, and by the way, I think this is particularly appropriate for the Alumni Association, the idea that if we can get around the barriers sometimes that universities set up, this department, this school, this college, this program, this center, this institute, those are all legitimate things. But if we can work together better than our peers, we will move faster and further. And we should be best in class at this. That is, working across the entire institution. We are geographically contiguous. Everybody, more or less, who works at Notre Dame is here in South Bend on this magnificent campus. We are animated by a common mission. Those are huge advantages to enable us to work from the Alumni Association to the chemistry department to the Notre Dame Global, all the various dimensions, student life, various dimensions of the university. Okay, trivia question. In my opinion, but my opinion is in the framework, what were the 4 most significant changes at Notre Dame in the last generation since 1990? That was the target date. Okay, name? Lynn, where are you from?
I'm from Villages in Florida.
Okay, great.
I am the class of 77 and admitting women to Notre Dame.
Okay, admitting to women to Notre Dame. Listen, I'm a professional historian, and I would say that's one of the 2 or 3 biggest changes at Notre Dame's history. But let's take the date since 1990. So women are already in. I think that's a huge, crucial issue, but that happens in 1972. Undergraduate women are admitted to Notre Dame. How about since 1990? Any ideas? What would be the biggest changes? Okay, over here, way in the back. Stand up. Say your name.
I'm Jessie Werther. I'm from Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C.
The Alumni Board. The opening of the Kyoto School.
Opening the Keough School, huge change. And that's a great answer. It's just that it's wrong because it's not one of my four. It is a really good answer, though. Yes, right here. Why don't you stand up? Yep. Name? From Los Angeles. Okay, the big push on research. A round of applause, Ravina. That is one of our four. And there were $83 million came to Notre Dame from outside the university in 2004. This year, it will probably be about 330. That is a very steep rate of increase. We think it's the fastest rate of increase of any private research university in the country. It's certainly among the fastest. 80 2004, 330 this year, remarkable. That is one of the four biggest changes at Notre Dame. Anybody else? Yes, in the back, stand up, name.
Mike Fletcher, doing from Chicago, the Campus Crossroads Project.
Okay, I'm going to give you, Mike, a partial round of applause for that. That's very good. Partial credit. I would put that under broadly the expansion of the physical campus. Okay, there's never been an era in Notre Dame's history when we had such rapid expansion of the physical campus. We went from 2.5 million academic square feet, as they say, in 1990 to almost 5 million academic square feet in 2022. We almost doubled. We will not expand the physical plant at that rate again. That wouldn't be environmentally responsible. And in a world of partially remote work and all kinds of things that are happening, we're going to have to become better at using the space we have. There will be some building projects, for sure, but probably not at that rate. But I think it's one of the four big ones in the last generation. One more guess. Yes. Stand up. Name? From Utah.
This might be with the research, but academic requirements for entrance
Okay. Peggy, we're going to give you a round of applause. That's pretty good. That is, here's how I would put it. I'm going to go to the slide now. I would put that under increasingly diverse and talented student body. That is, right now, it is, as you all know, because you hear this every year, it is so difficult to get into Notre Dame as an undergraduate. It is so challenging because we have so many talented undergraduates applying to come to Notre Dame, and we hate to turn down all of those, a lot of those great students, the vast majority of those great students. It is also an increasingly diverse student body. Last year, after the Board of Trustees set this as a goal, for the first time ever, 20% of Notre Dame students, undergraduates, were Pell eligible, that is, their family income was less than $70,000 a year, and or first-generation college. 20% Pell eligible and or first-generation college. That means we have more low-income students at Notre Dame than we've had in a long time. Okay, maybe since it could be the 19th century. We don't have data going back that far. That's a remarkable change. We weren't ready for that, I think it's objectively true to say, and we're working to figure out how we support those students as well. I would add, too, the remarkable growth in the endowment. If you'd have said in 1990 that our endowment would become bigger than University of Chicago, Duke, Emory, there's a list of about 10 or 12 institutions that we've passed in the last generation, no one would have believed that. That came from two sources. It came from the extraordinary generosity of people in this room and the thousands of others we can imagine who believe in Notre Dame. And it came from having the best endowment team in the country, best endowment management team. Our performance over a 25-year period was second only to Yale. That is a difference of billions of dollars. And that's enabled us to have the ambitions that we now have. Okay, very well done there. Where should we go in the next 10 years? Three broad themes: strengthening foundations, global Catholicism, and science and engineering in a world of need. First theme, strengthening foundations. What do we mean by that? Universities it's a competitive environment. Okay, and we do not want to, this is a big part of my job, we do not want to allocate resources to areas where we go from zero to good. Okay, it's too competitive for that. We have to figure out how we can allocate resources and go from good to great. Figure out ways where we can develop unequivocally top-tier research programs and have those research programs be among the very best. Global Catholicism. There are 1.2 billion Catholics in the world right now. 1.2 billion baptized Catholics. The average baptized Catholic does not look like me. It is a woman of color living in the global south. That is the demographic of the Catholic Church as we look forward in the 21st century. And Notre Dame is going to have to better embody that reality in the next generation if we are to sustain and deepen our Catholic mission, which is our greatest comparative advantage. I believe that firmly. Third, science and engineering in a world in need. It would be a lot less expensive if I didn't come up to you and talk about science and engineering. It is very expensive for us to hire faculty members in those areas, and the lab equipment is expensive, etc. But there are so many problems facing humanity that have scientific and engineering dimensions that we need to compete with the very best in those areas. And we're strategizing right now on how we can do that. I will say, too, I think we're the only Catholic place that has the will and the resources and the drive to compete in science and engineering at the very highest level. The fundamental thing that we call for in the framework, there's 9 whole pages on this, is investing in our people. That means investing in undergraduates, often through financial aid, making sure we continue to be as competitive as we can be in financial aid. The Board of Trustees set a goal back in the we forget, some of you know, in the 1980s, when I went here, Notre Dame was not very competitive in terms of financial aid across the country. There were lots of students who turned down Notre Dame to go to great state universities or to honors programs at other colleges, etc. Now we are competing with almost everybody, and that is transformative in the students that we can attract. We will have to do more for graduate students in terms of paying them to PhD stipends so they can go get PhDs and advance research throughout the world. We will do more for professional school students, too. It's just interesting, because that wasn't true a generation ago either. People who came here for law school or business school didn't expect to get any financial aid. But those areas are becoming more like undergraduate education now, and we're having financial aid needs there in the same degree. I could talk more about faculty and staff, but maybe I'll wait for the questions. Diversity and inclusion. Sometimes we think our goals in becoming a more diverse and inclusive university are over here, and our Catholic mission is over here, and their intention. I'm here to tell you it's the same thing. If we're going to be a great Catholic university, we have to become a more diverse and inclusive university here today in South Bend, Indiana. That is going to be one of the things that makes us great. And we need to blend those two things and remember that our commitment to diversity and inclusion comes out of our Catholic mission, not alongside it. South Bend in the region. This is the first strategic framework ever to use these 3 words: South Bend, Indiana. We now know that if South Bend, the region, not just the city, doesn't thrive, Notre Dame won't thrive. Almost, I would say, well over half of our faculty recruitments are actually dual career recruitments. If we're recruiting a woman in chemistry and she says, you know, my husband's going to need a job for me to make this move, we need to have a vibrant region where that husband can find a job, at Notre Dame or in this region. Shannon Cullinan is the leader, the executive vice president, my colleague in the main building. He's the leader of this effort. He says probably 20% of his time into trying to develop South Bend in the region. We've had lots of progress in the last decade, but there's more to do. Becoming a more global university is as important for the next generation at Notre Dame as the effort to develop research was in the last. I said the research dimension of Notre Dame was one of the big changes since 1990. We look ahead 10 years, we need to become more global. There are a handful of universities that will have, as they say, global brands established in the next 20, 30 years, and we need to be one of them. How many of you have had the experience of being outside the United States and saying, I work at Notre Dame, and someone saying, so you work at the cathedral in Paris, okay? I've had that happen more times than I would like to admit. We need to change that so that everyone understands how great Notre Dame is. A lot of dimensions to that. One thing we're going to do is probably admit more students from outside the United States, targeting Catholic students from the global south. We're going to develop more partnerships, including with great Catholic universities around the world. We're going to think about academic programs that can widen our global reputation. All of that in an effort to develop that reputation, which is so strong in the United States, outside the United States. We launched in the framework a number of university-wide initiatives. Again, thinking as an institution, thinking that if we could work together and get everybody at the university involved in these academic areas, we could advance our reputation, but also do good in the world. The first three we launched were in democracy, ethics, and poverty. I don't need to tell you that there's a bit of a democratic crisis, not just in the United States, but around the world. We have great scholars in those areas that we think can be really leading people in helping resolve and understand that crisis. And we also think Notre Dame has some convening power. The ability to bring together, Dolly and I were in Washington a week ago, the ability to bring together people on right and left for some of the honest, cordial conversations, tough conversations that the country needs. We think Notre Dame has a place there. Our reputation in ethics is good, but it's probably not as good, or the reputation is probably better than the reality. We should be number one here. We should build on our strengths in philosophy and theology, but also do applied ethics in business and in engineering and other areas of the university, and we launched that initiative this fall. And then finally, poverty. We are already really good at understanding the causes of poverty in the United States. We have a thing called Lab for Economic Opportunities, which is very good at that. We want to go outside the United States, too, and bring together the scholars in the Keough School of Global Affairs who are doing that kind of work. Up here are these three leaders of these initiatives, Dave Campbell for democracy, Megan Sullivan for philosophy, and Jim Sullivan for poverty, and they're off to a great start. I will say for poverty, we were proud to announce a $100 million gift to support, biggest gift to an academic program in Notre Dame's history, just to support that effort. We just launched this spring 2 new initiatives, one on bioengineering and life sciences, bringing together College of Science, College of Engineering, and then one on mental health. Many of you know there's a student mental health crisis, and Notre Dame is not in any way immune to that. And there's a broader mental health crisis in the society. We think we can develop some of the cutting-edge, scientifically based research to treat some of those mental health disparities. And I'll just add, it connects to our South Bend strategy, because we're going to open a big mental health clinic in South Bend that's going to enable the number of people we see in a year to go from 150 to 1,500. That will be good for our research, good for the students who want to go into that area, but also good for our region. That's Kristen Valentino, who's a leader in that initiative, and then Paul Bone on the right, who's going to lead the BELLS, or Bioengineering and Life Sciences Initiative. More initiatives to come. We feel pretty good having stood up those 5 in the first year. More will happen next year. How do alumni fit into the framework? I actually think it's crucial. I meant it when I said this is a comparative advantage for Notre Dame. There's a line in the framework, if you read it, that talks about the power and the sheer number of our alumni clubs, which is better than anybody else. We want you to be ambassadors for Notre Dame's mission and vision. We want you to help recruit future students at all levels, get those people applying to Notre Dame, and even for those of you who are from outside the United States, we want more undergraduates, graduate students from outside the United States too, to know about and apply to Notre Dame. And you know this, career and networking opportunities, that's been a part of your work for many years, and that's so important to helping our students find what their real vocation is after they leave here. And then related to the second bullet point, global engagement. You are part of this project as well. Here's the dream. In a decade, we're more anchored in our Catholic mission. We're more diverse and inclusive. We've continued to grow in terms of top-tier research programs. We've enhanced undergraduate education and moral formation within that education. I could talk about the Moreau program and other things that we're trying to improve. We've continued that ambitious research trajectory. We've developed a stronger international reputation. We have competitive financial aid for students at all levels. And we've increased collaboration across colleges and schools. We've become better at thinking as an institution. I really believe that this is the most exciting experiment in global higher education. That is, we're going to be animated by a distinctive Catholic mission, and we are going to compete with the very best. It's really the reason I'm here. Sometimes people ask me, why would you want to be provost? Are there a lot of meetings? The answer to that is yes, there are a lot of meetings. But it's a great job. I'm working with a great team. But the real reason to take this job at Notre Dame as a job I would take nowhere else is because of this. The excitement around this experiment and the idea that we could do something bigger, better, and different than anybody else and make a contribution to the world, to the church, and to our communities in so doing. Look forward to working with you on that project in the decade ahead. Okay, so we have time for questions. Happy to take any. Yes, sir. Say your name and where you're from. Yep. You know, I honestly don't know much about that. For those who don't know, you know, Notre Dame owns a building on Michigan Avenue, and it's where some of the EMBA and Chicago-based MBA programs, which they've withdrawn a little bit from in the last couple of years, and I think rightly. We could talk more about that. Most of the building is leased out to other firms, often architectural firms. And so we don't have a plan yet for that space, and we're thinking about it. But thank you for the question. Sir? No. Here and then we'll go there. Stand up. Say your name.
Is this okay? Great. Ryan Bradley, Club of Madison.
Good.
One of the things I've been reading a lot about recently is the sort of crisis in higher education with cost value for undergrads and how that affects folks of all, you know, all types of backgrounds and everything. So, you know, how are we thinking about over the next 10 years trying to build in reducing cost for the undergrad education so that, you know, in addition to the aid, the overall cost to attend comes down? How does that fit in with what we're thinking?
So great question, and thank you. I'll ask you a question. How much full tuition, room and board, travel to campus, buying your books, pizza once a week, how much does that cost at Notre Dame next year? Just at $80,000. Okay. That's what they call the all-in cost. And there's a couple of things to say about that. First, we know that's an extraordinary number. And we know the parents who take out second mortgages and sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice to send their kids to Notre Dame. Every single day we work with that on our front of our mind. Okay, we know that. We do think we're giving great value. That a Notre Dame education is not just for your first job, it's for a lifetime of skill acquisition and friendships and moral formation that we think is pretty impressive. So that's the first observation I'd make. Second observation is that the actual cost of higher education has been growing at a rate well below inflation now for over a decade. There was a period of 30 years where it went well above inflation. And that's a problem for any industry, especially a people-intensive industry like higher education, but it has been growing below inflation. Third, and probably most important, for the 60% of our students who are on financial aid, 60% of our students on financial aid, average financial aid package is $30,000 a year. Half are above that, half are below that. For those 60% on financial aid, the net cost, the cost of a Notre Dame education after the $80,000 tuition, and then they'll say $40,000, $50,000 in an aid package, the net cost has been going down, not just in real dollars, in real dollars, been going down over the last 6 to 7 years. I wish that's what the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post was reporting, that the net cost for those 60% of Notre Dame students is actually going down. That is, our financial aid is growing faster than our tuition increases and inflation. So I certainly don't want to sound defensive. There is a good story to tell there, even as every single day, everybody here is also worried about cost. Yes, sir.
Tom Skiba, Fort Wayne, Indiana. We have a world-class development department.
Yep.
I have the pleasure of working with some people in the investment department, so it is world-class. Yep. How do you plan to fund these initiatives?
So it has been great to be with you this afternoon. We're done now. I'm not going to answer that question. No, that's a good question. So it's going to be a mixture of two things. It is going to be fundraising, and it's also internal reallocation. That is a hard thing, honestly, for universities to do. If you were to ask me, and I'll answer it, What is the toughest thing for universities to do? And the thing they're least good at? It's closing things. That is the toughest thing for universities to do and the thing that we are least good at. We are closing some things. We are reallocating internal resources because we so believe in these university initiatives where we think we can really make a difference here. And we're seeking benefaction. So it's going to be a mixture of the two. Father Jenkins and Shannon Cullinan really hold me to that. You know, it should be a mixture of the two, and we need to not just be thinking about new dollars, but reallocating some of the dollars that we have. Yes, sir, maybe way in the back, I see.
David McManus, Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
There's been a lot of talk about the undue influence of U.S. News and World Report on things in higher ed. Is there any talk of Notre Dame or fellow institutions of pulling out of that report?
Yeah. So if you couldn't hear the question, it was about U.S. News and the relationship between U.S. News and Notre Dame. Some of you may know that a few of the elite law schools pulled out of the law school ranking done by U.S. News, Yale and a few others. And U.S. News said, well, we're just going to rank you anyway. And it doesn't seem to have had that much effect. Listen, I don't love U.S. News. And I don't think most young people should make decisions about what is the right fit for college for them based on a ranking which is quite imperfect. I will say U.S. News ranking at least measures some things that we value, graduation rate, a whole range of things. So we participate in it. We give them our data. You will notice Notre Dame never broadcasts we're number one. I mean, well, we're not number one. We're number 19 in U.S. News. We don't brag about that. Okay, a lot of other institutions, and I'm not judging them. I'm not working there, and I understand why people do what they do. That's the first thing they will tell you. We're X in U.S. News. We don't do that, but we do participate because we recognize that families are trying to make one of the most important financial decisions of the family's life, and in a sense, more information the better. I wish there were other rankings. If there's an entrepreneur in the room, I wish there were other rankings that had different metrics and had the same valence or power as U.S. News. Because there are different ways. What if you want to go to a small liberal arts college where every class is 15 students or less? How do you rank that versus a Harvard or University of Michigan? Well, they're not really the same species, and I don't think the U.S. News rankings really get at that. But yes, sir. So the question was about AI. We're struggling with that along with everybody else. Okay, there's an undergraduate piece to it in that, and I would call this just the pure pedagogy piece. How do we encourage students in the classroom to use AI wisely but not write their papers with AI? And, you know, we have cases in the honor code coming up to me now that are, you know, what are we going to do about that? Okay, that's a narrow thing. How do we get our faculty to use AI creatively? Because I think it's going to be used in the workplaces that these students are entering quite soon after graduation. And so how do we use it to advance their learning, not deter it? That's a question we're grappling with. And then third and finally, what is the research dimension where Notre Dame might be able to make a difference? And you know, it's a little bit surprising. In our computer science department, in applied math, a couple other areas of the university, we have some national experts in AI, and you'll see them in the news talking about, and they're doing top-level research. And by the way, it's a good area to be doing research in that there's a lot of both federal and private foundation money available in this area. And so we're not going to be as big as a Carnegie Mellon or a Stanford in this area, but we're going to be quite credible in AI research. And so we're trying to figure out what our strategy is there, too. So undergraduate pedagogy on a number of different dimensions. How do we use it well, but not let students use it to make their education less effective? And then research. We just had a committee report released on AI. If you write me afterward, I'm happy to send you a copy, chaired by our Vice President of Research, brand new guy, Jeff Rhodes from Purdue, and Jane Livingston, who runs OIT, Office of Information Technology. And that report lays out some of the things we think we can do. But everyone's stunned by the pace of change in this area, I should add. And we're thinking through it like everybody else. Somebody had their hand up in the back. Yes, sir.
Hi, Ross Dentremont with the Young ND Board. Other than possibly increasing their compensation packages. How is the university recruiting graduate and professional students to fulfill its research mission?
So great question. We are increasing the compensation package for the PhD students. We're going to make an announcement soon where that compensation will go up for students getting PhDs at Notre Dame. So that is part of our strategy. Professional school students, no one pays them to go to professional school in the way that we pay PhD students. Now, it's not a ton of money. We're talking about going from like $33,000 to $36,000, that kind of thing. But it makes a difference in PhD student recruitment. Professional school students is how do you strategically use your financial aid dollars? And how do you get more of those dollars available? And it's a calculation. I would say we're doing pretty well. The law school in particular has some pretty strong endowments, and that's making them better because they're able to offer quite competitive financial packages for the students that they most desire or who have the most need. A little bit less so, I think, for the MBA. The MBA is a younger program, too. So we're just thinking about that kind of going program by program. We also have programs like the MDiv in theology, and that's a master's program, and the master's in architecture. They've historically had not nearly enough financial aid. And I would really like to change that. If you think about the MDiv, they don't pay tuition, but they get very little for a living stipend. And these are people who are going to more or less go into church careers. They're not going to make a ton of money. And I would like it for them to have a better financial situation. Because they're really dedicating their lives, in a sense, to service. Sir, and then over here. Yes?
Tom Kennedy from Pittsburgh.
They've got a microphone for you there. Yeah.
We get 20,000 plus applications to accept 2,000. Very difficult task. How can the university use this group of people who are all around the country and possibly know or could give some input into the students who are applying and help make good choices in accepting students?
So, in other words, what could the collaboration be between the admissions office and the Alumni Association? Is that kind of the, I mean, one part of the collaboration I indicated already, that is encouraging students to apply. We never want to encourage students just to apply for the application's sake. I will say there are great universities that will boast about what they call their yield rate. That is, they'll boast about they'll boast about the number of applications they get and what a small percentage they actually admit. And then they'll boast about the number of students who, once they admit, actually come. We don't do that. Okay, now we measure that, we look at that very hard. What we really want is a student body who's passionate about Notre Dame and are excellent students, because it's a competitive environment. If you're not an excellent student, this is a tough place to be. And we need to figure out maybe a different spot for you. But if you're an excellent student and you're passionate about Notre Dame, we want you here. And so that's the primary way, I would say. Our admissions office has never done alumni interviews. You know, who knows, at some point they may think that some universities do that. It's becoming a logistical challenge when you have 28,000 applications. If you think about doing an interview of every one of those students, most of the interviews, because most of the kids are going to end up, this kid's amazing. And then you have a lot of disappointed people on the other end. So that's just something worth thinking about. Question over there.
Hello. Tiffany Tatum, I'm from Houston. You talked about the importance of investing in South Bend and the surrounding region, as well as the significance and the importance of diversity within the student body. So what are you all doing to ensure that you're recruiting and retaining faculty of color? Because that, by extension, will help improve that sense of belonging for students of color.
Great question. We're working hard at it. And I would say it's an imperfect work in process, but I appreciate the question. I mean, we're all here together at Notre Dame. Let me give you a sense of what the data tell us. We do disproportionately well compared to our, as we now say, AAU private peers, in recruiting, retaining Latino faculty. We're doing a little bit better than Northwestern is, for example. We do less well on African American faculty, and that's a problem. That is a problem because the number of African American students has increased. We need to be a more diverse and inclusive community. If you look at the Global South, that's where the growth in the Catholic population is in sub-Saharan Africa. We know that's a problem. There are things we can do. We can think about what we call cluster hires in the business of the Provost office. That is, can we hire a cluster of people in a particular area and maybe get more African American faculty that way? So we're thinking about those various strategies, but that's kind of where we are. You know, doing a little bit better than we might have expected, in part, I think, because of the Catholic mission with Latino faculty, not doing as well with African American. And we're worried about both. Because we know, if you look at our undergraduate student body, that's about 35% from what we call underrepresented groups. That's an all-time high for Notre Dame. Now we're waiting, after the Supreme Court decision of last summer, to see how we turn out, and we obey the law, right? The Supreme Court makes the law, we obey the law. But we're still committed, because as part of our Catholic mission, we're committed to diversity, and now we're going to see how that all plays out in the first year post that decision. But thank you for the question. Okay, yes? Here, they're going to walk you over to the microphone so the other room can hear.
A lot of Catholic institutions are struggling right now, and we started to see, colleges and universities close. Does that present Notre Dame with an opportunity to increase its presence in other parts of the country, or to assist struggling institutions to preserve Catholic education?
Yeah, I know it's tough out there. I mean, we sometimes forget what a privileged environment we're in. And there are 230 Catholic colleges and universities in the United States, most founded in the late 19th century. That's a big number, okay? And especially small liberal arts colleges in the Midwest and in the Northeast are looking at the demographics and thinking they're going to have to be very creative and smart in how they flourish. Now, there's lots of exceptions. Many of them are in great shape. But it is a real worry. Notre Dame alone can't save those colleges. But we have lots of partnerships and collaborations with all kinds of different Catholic colleges. We see ourselves as a leader in the world of Catholic colleges, leading global Catholic research university. And we have lots of partnerships and collaborations. And certainly, I think of one in particular, of course, Holy Cross College right across the street here. That collaboration has become much more powerful and deep in the last decade, including St. Mary's, of course, working with St. Mary's. And so those exist, and we want to strengthen those. We participate in the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities. I would say that's the limit of it right now. But what you point to is a real challenge in the generation ahead, no question. One more. Yes. They're going to give you a microphone, I think.
Thank you. Hi. Hi, Bridget V. Meyer-Monahan from Washington, D.C. As you look at the strategic vision and some of those initiatives you listed, democracy, ethics, et cetera, are there plans to bring those into the core curriculum or weave them throughout classes, holistically, so that all students, no matter their major, are, receiving that type of focus in the education?
Such a great question. That, by the way, that is a real Provost office question. I mean, we're getting into the nitty-gritty. And so the question was, will those initiatives have an impact on the general education core curriculum? We hope so. Okay. One of the things that made us focus on ethics, just to give you an example. So I mentioned this woman, Megan Sullivan, who's leading our ethics initiative. Sometime Dahlia will have her come in and speak to you. She's incredible. She is a fantastic lecturer. And she dreamed up this class called God in the Good Life, which I think the Alumni Association has done something with. God in the Good Life, as a way to reinvigorate the introductory philosophy class. We have a philosophy and theology requirement at Notre Dame. Reinvigorate that introductory philosophy class and make it really big picture. Why are we here? Does God exist? What do we think about our destiny or our vocation in the world? And make it fun and challenging and interesting. So classic texts, reading Aristotle, etc., but also lots of use of videos and lots of interactive things with the students, and the students break into small groups and they have evening sessions. I could go on about that class. That's an example of the kind of class we hope comes out of the ethics initiative. More really exciting classes that are our philosophy requirements and that enable those requirements to really get at where students are now. Love to see the same thing with theology. Love to see that same thing in other areas. So It won't always be a direct one-to-one relationship. So the bioengineering life sciences, that will lead to good undergraduate courses, but that's fundamentally a research enterprise. And courses will come out of that. A few of the others, it's more direct. Poverty, what that means for the study of economics and in the business school, ethics, I just mentioned, democracy, of course. We have actually a marquee course now called Keeping the Republic. That was a phrase of Benjamin Franklin in the late 18th century. It's a great thing to have a constitution and to have a republic. I hope you can keep it. And the Keeping the Republic course is about the history of democracy, and it's taught by Dave Campbell, who's leading our democracy initiative. So I'm hopeful that there will be real benefits for undergraduate education out of these initiatives. Listen, if you hear nothing else, thank you. Thank you for the work you do for Notre Dame. Never for a moment think it's not valued, because it is everywhere across the university. I hope you have a great meeting.